honor of hosting the SDO panel here, so this is going to be a good one. So if I can have Tiago, Kevin, and John up on stage, please. So these guys represent a lot of the blocks that were shown earlier about the standards that feed into prpl. So I'm hoping we can have a really good, engaging conversation. Let the guys sit down. Everybody knows who these guys are, so I won't go any further introduction. So I'm going to start out with John. What's going on in Broadband Forum at the moment and next year? Any exciting stuff, and how does it hook into prpl directions, John?
Yeah, I mean, we are continuing on our path for our Device 2 data model, TR181. We're actually in the middle of finishing up some of the next round of updates to that, one of which is to bring in the next version of data elements from Wi-Fi Alliance. So that's a big update. We're also still, working on evolving USP. And, we've got a certification program behind that as well. So a lot around, USP, remotely managing the device, as well as using USP internally inside the device.
USP is was mentioned on earlier panels too. So I know, Tiago, that you have operator-managed Wi-Fi, right? And at the heart of it seems to be everything that prpl is doing. So if you can talk about that as well as what WBA are up to for the next year as well then.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. So first of all, thank you for the invitation to be here once more, representing the Wireless Broadband Alliance. Definitely for this audience, operator-managed Wi-Fi is a key program in the Alliance. So that idea of defining a reference architecture that operators, equipment manufacturers, solution providers can follow and build together to identify all the different standards that should be used and the different components of that architecture and how to plug different components into that environment. That's definitely a big priority for us. Then the Alliance continued to work a lot on Wi-Fi cellular convergence. So that's a big topic for us, special on not only on the residential Wi-Fi, but even on gas and public Wi-Fi, how cellular Wi-Fi can coexist better. And by the way, will become even more complex with the NTN, direct-to-the-phone type of services. Then I've been doing a lot of work, our members, on KOS, KOE for Wi-Fi. And this has a huge impact as well on the residential environment. How to understand better what is happening on that local network, type of applications, and of course, how new tools like AI can help to drive that KOS, KOE experience that we all want to benefit on our houses when we do different applications.
Okay, that's a great segue, Tiago, for Kevin then. Kevin, I don't think people understand that you set out on a new cadence for Wi-Fi. Every 4 years, a new spin of the number, trains and carriages moving along with features going into them, right? There's a huge amount happening in Wi-Fi. And to Tiago's point, it's about reliability with performance now. So if you can give people an update on what's going on in Wi-Fi Alliance for the next foreseeable future.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, everybody. So I may get like a collective groan from people in the audience on this, but believe it or not, we are starting work on Wi-Fi 8 already. And I know much of the industry is still kind of going through the process of digesting Wi-Fi 7. But as you mentioned, I think within the industry, there has been this pivot, I would say, going back to Wi-Fi 6, where even though the speeds on the box are still important, increasingly we're looking at capabilities in Wi-Fi that help deliver a better experience, right? So it's not just the speed, it's the consistency of delivering that speed, consistently low latencies, and that's what we're expected to see in Wi-Fi 8, of course, ultra high reliability, getting into a lot of new use cases beyond even residential, into things like factory automation, et cetera. So that obviously the train keeps going on generational Wi-Fi. We have developments going around Wi-Fi sensing and standardization around Wi-Fi sensing. But in all of this, those are kind of some of the key features or capabilities a lot of people are talking about in Wi-Fi. But underneath it all, we understand that I've heard people kind of make the comment of, you're not really delivering a feature if you haven't delivered a way to instrument and understand what is happening with that feature out in a deployment. And so as we talked about, the alignment between USP, Tier 369 and Wi-Fi data elements, that work is ongoing. And I think increasingly what you should expect to see is that work is not happening as an afterthought when we deliver a new generation. It's like, okay, well now we need to go back and figure out the data model, but rather kind of integral to the development is figuring out the data model, not only for understanding what is happening with those set of capabilities in the deployment, but even to an extent getting into more of the troubleshooting for, okay, let's actually instrument where this protocol can fail or where this technology can fail so that we can start passing those events up rather than having people kind of doing that ad hoc to figure out what's going on. So a lot of really great work there. And I think the last piece I would highlight is just, we've been around for 25 years. As you can imagine, anytime you're building something for 25 years, you acquire a bit of technical debt. And so with our certification, we've had a very very kind of concerted effort of how do we make sure that our certification is sustainable from the point of being low cost, being fast and efficient. And there are a lot of improvements happening in that are actually delivering this year.
So I think that's one of the three guys have kind of hit on the key topic, right? Because as we try and get this stuff running in a stable, productized, operationalized stack running in the field, as Kevin just said there, right, the complexity of this stuff is going up, and then the tools needed to make it simple. I mean, you think about it, whatever about Wi-Fi 7 being performance, Wi-Fi 8 being reliability, it's the mix of the Wi-Fi 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 devices that you have to then debug and see what's happening. So I don't know, John, any thoughts there about the future telemetry and USP telemetry and where it's done?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, we can always start off with, USP and, bulk data collection aspects. Basically getting that device telemetry, that information from the device, out of the device and into the cloud. That could be your first step, and then you need to start processing that data. So you're looking at some AI and machine learning technologies there to start figuring out, that bulk set of data and all that information and what's important, what's not important. But eventually we want to kind of try to push back into the devices and have the devices be able to be a little bit smarter in themselves and not necessarily tell us a bunch of raw data, but start to figure out some of the information that's important, correlated, and then send that up so that there's more processing happening at the devices and at the edge instead of inside the cloud itself.
Sounds good. And Tiago,
Yeah, I wanted to bring a completely different angle, is to reinforce the importance of collaboration between these type of organizations and even Purple Foundation. So super critical that we understand each other, we know what each organization is focused on, we know the roadmaps, we avoid any duplication of efforts, we take synergies between us, because that's fundamental, because like you said, the complexity and the pressure that is on the residential broadband today, it's much demanding from the past, and my perspective is going to be even more complex. So we see many of these over-the-top players sharing analytics, putting pressure on the operators that their applications are not behaving as they would like, and we need, as industry bodies, to join forces to solve that.
What do you also see in terms of the 5G and the Wi-Fi side, Tiago? You mentioned that there's obviously different access networks like fiber and FWA, but there's also 5G and Wi-Fi. So where's WBA focusing on that stuff?
Yeah, we have been pushing for an agenda that Wi-Fi is, let's say, a wonderful tool for MNOs to use it, especially for indoor coverage, for residential environment, but as well in some industrial or enterprise or even in some public locations. Because majority of the times infrastructure is already available. Cellular has no coverage or no capacity or is on the limit of capacity. So instead of investing on a completely redesign of the cellular network, why not utilizing more the Wi-Fi? And for that, there is a lot of challenges because MNOs would like to have some policy implementation, either on QoS or QoE or even types of devices and customers. So that brings a lot of new challenges to the Wi-Fi. So one of the work that we have been doing a lot is how the Wi-Fi network can expose to the owner of one identity from a mobile network to understand the status of the Wi-Fi network on real time. So before I do the handover between C5G to Wi-Fi, can I get some metrics from the Wi-Fi network that I can make a more intelligent handover? That has been a big challenge.
Yep, absolutely. Kevin, when you look at, we're talking to some of the operators here today, and obviously coming in at Wi-Fi 7 is a great position for someone to move to purple. If you were to give an operator advice for the future of their purple Wi-Fi journey, what's the key things to look at?
Yeah, I guess the key things would be certainly Wi-Fi 7, right? I mean, just the reality is Wi-Fi 7 is today's Wi-Fi. You're going to get some fairly significant improvements in consistent low latency use of MLO. 6 gigahertz is absolutely huge. Right, and I know we're in Europe right now, and so right now only half of the band is currently available. But when you look at what is possible with that kind of pristine spectrum from a performance standpoint, having fewer legacy devices in that band, that is key. I mean, everything from Wi-Fi 7 and forward is going to rely on use of that spectrum. So that's key. And I think the other thing is just, there was a lot of talk this morning about certification, particularly focused on purple certification. But the underlying Wi-Fi has to work well also. And Wi-Fi certified is how we as an industry have managed that for the past 25 years. And we're seeing very clear differentiation. So we've had this whole effort of going out, grabbing off-the-shelf equipment and kind of putting it through its paces with some of the more advanced Wi-Fi 7 features, right? And we're seeing very clearly issues in uncertified gear that we're not seeing in certified gear. And so it's great if the upper part of the stack has been tested, but if the underlying Wi-Fi capabilities are not interoperable, that's going to cause experience issues, right? So I think really ensuring that remains a requirement for devices. And then second, and there was a point earlier this morning around kind of the feedback loop, right? And purple really trying to harness that. I think it goes all the way up and down the stack. I think the more that Wi-Fi Alliance can hear from operators on what they're actually seeing in their deployments and the problems with Wi-Fi devices, we can make Wi-Fi certified better to meet those needs, right? So even though we're clearly seeing differentiation, Wi-Fi certified is really more table stakes today. And I think there's a lot of work that we can do as an industry to leverage that program to make sure the Wi-Fi is ultimately meeting all of the objectives of operators.
Is the Wi-Fi 8 Plugfest going to be the most complex Plugfest ever since the start of time, I guess?
Yes. Yes, it will.
Combinatorial problems must be huge.
It is, and I mean, in the testing, just to get basic test coverage, our test plans are growing by like orders of magnitude with each subsequent generation, and then you have the previous testing as well. But no, it's going to be incredibly complicated, especially as you're now getting kind of multi-AP coordination. It's something we haven't had to deal with before, so it's just an entirely new area that we're going to have to learn. And I think it just reinforces the importance of, yes, our certification is essential. I look at it almost like an MVP. It's enough to where ODMs can start incorporating these technologies, but there's still work we have to do as each subsequent generation is being released into the market of how do we quickly fix things that maybe we just didn't catch in test coverage, because it is so incredibly complicated. It's this constant trade-off of we can make it so expensive that nobody can go through certification to catch everything, or you try and find that happy balance, right, in any of this. And there's always going to be a miss. And so how do we very quickly get feedback from the industry and catch those things right away?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say That's super interesting what Kevin said, because even in WBA, we have a Wi-Fi 7 trials program where we pick up certified equipment from Wi-Fi Alliance. We bring to specific verticals use cases, including residential broadband. And we have the carriers, the solution providers, the equipment manufacturers working all together, simulating different real type of testing and environments that occur on the fixed broadband. Yeah. And then we feed back to the industry the findings. Yeah. So this, I think it's super important, this constant looking for improvements, even if it's small things, small improvements, very important that between us, these organizations share as much information as possible.
And you know, BBF also has a program around Wi-Fi performance. Really, it's tier 398 is the test plan, but there's a BBF 398 program there. It's operator grade Wi-Fi. So it's kind of you know piggybacking on what you've done in Wi-Fi Alliance and WBA, but taking it that next step up and trying to kind of isolate the performance aspects.
So I think one last question to you all, and I think from a Purple perspective, right? What's clear at the moment is that to build, even for Wi-Fi 7, obviously we're going through that at the moment to get a Purple really maxed out on the current available Wi-Fi 7 features. But when we move into Wi-Fi 8 with things like seamless mobility domains and all those combinations of permutations, to plan it into Purple now, right? To make sure that we agree what the primary features are and support within the stack as well, right? So that's probably a key thing. So I don't, what's your comment on where you see Purple next year, key features that correlate to your particular organizations?
I'll start. I mean, you know, Purple's already headed down the USP path and the Device 2 data model and has integrated OBUSPA. I think those are all, you know, great steps, but we're continuing to work with Purple and Broadband Forum in evolving USP and evolving the data model. And so as we continue that path, I think it's just more adoption of those standards and kind of the understanding that USP is the path forward. It's the right direction. It's got so many more features and capabilities than TR69.
Before I go to the two guys, John, AI obviously, right? We have LCM for pushing models.
Yeah.
But we also need to probably extend the data model to be able to telemetrize those AI models, are they working, the health of them. So yeah, we need to get something going there, I guess, for both BBF and for Purple.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a big step. We're going to have to start looking at how we get that into the data models and the USP spec and making sure that we can enable those things.
Tiago, what do you see happening?
Yeah, for WBI, I'll mention just two things. So one is definitely the exposure of information. So I think the network and the devices, they need to exchange, in our perspective, much more information. That needs to be a stronger collaboration with the device manufacturers, particularly three of them that we all know who they are. So I think that piece is fundamental because we benefit from all these services throughout those devices. And I can have the best technology on my infrastructure, but if the device is not able to manage that, is a big challenge. The other one, Kevin mentioned, the coordination between APs, I think is a huge step forward in terms of delivering QoE, QoS. That's fundamental. Especially in Europe, that we have all these, majority of us live in apartments, we have all these Wi-Fi networks all around us, so trying to minimize all those interferences, providing a much more quality of experience is fundamental.
Yeah, I think for us, Wi-Fi 8 is just now being defined. So I'm just going to highlight the importance of the broader ecosystem being involved in those conversations about what is actually necessary to deliver on the use cases that you all are trying to provide to your customers, right? There's a lot of things that are in the IEEE standard that never make it into Wi-Fi, right? But right now is the time where all of that down selection is really happening. And so certainly not waiting towards the end, as things tend to get fairly baked, is incredibly important. And kind of in that same vein, the more that we as an industry can understand the needs of our downstream customers and the rest of the broader ecosystem, the better. So Tiago, you mentioned kind of the understanding more of the perspective of the client devices. So that's one of the things now we're working on in data elements is, okay, so how do we actually start getting some of that information off the client, what it's perceiving, and getting that into the network and ultimately up to whoever's managing the network or AI models, whatever it's going to be. But none of that progresses without the perspective of other organizations like these, and with ultimately the deployers of Wi-Fi feeding that perspective and that information kind of into the machine, right?
So I'd like to thank the guys very much. It's been a very short panel, but they're obviously here for people to talk to. So I'd like to thank you again, guys. Great panel. And they're here for the rest of the day, so come talk to them. Talk to you later.